Welcome again to our English First Additional Language Preparatory Examination Series for grade 12. This is a supplementary lesson on analysis of a cartoon. I felt the need to take another cartoon just so that we sharpen those skills. Remember, practice makes perfect and repetition it is the father of learning. Right, so I have said in the first lesson of our first revision lesson that we rely on the character's body language, facial expression to fully understand how or what is the storyline in the cartoon. And then basically, because this is visual literacy, interpretation of what is that you see, all your responses must be backed up with evidence. And where are you going to deduce your evidence? By using adjectives, are correct, if not relevant, if not appropriate adjectives to describe the features being at a facial expression of the characters body language. And then I've also indicated that you must make note of all the small details included in a frame. Remember, a cartoon is a series of frames. However, we need to be careful that at times maybe examiners may use a cartoon, which is very rare, to be honest, where we can come across a cartoon of only a single frame. And then I've also said that it is important to go to this section of the question paper where it says note so that you thoroughly understand the relationship between characters. In this cartoon, the man's name is John and the cat's name is Garfield. So we are going to read about John and Garfield. Garfield is a pet that belongs to John. So it is important to read this. And then I said that before you can even go to the questions, please make sure that you understand the storyline. A cartoon may be there to entertain, which is a humorous cartoon, I'm repeating. And then in grade 12, you should be in a position to fully explain how humor is created in a cartoon. And then I've said that you analyze each and every frame, you check the words of the characters that which are included in a speech bubble. And then interestingly enough, we also have what you call a thought bubble, indicating that the character is actually thinking out loud. And then this is how we see a thought bubble with just circles and then words. And then I've also made a key reference to font sizes, that when in a cartoon words are bolded in capital letters with an inclusion of any punctuation marks such as exclamation mark and a question mark is to indicate that the character is shouting or saying the words louder. So you need to also not answer only by stating the character's emotion without backing up with evidence to support how you arrived at the point where you noted that the character is happy or sad. You must strengthen those responses with evidence. And then where do you get your evidence? Analysis of body language and facial expression. But I will repeat again that please do not answer by saying body language and don't answer by saying facial expression. Use adjectives again to do what? To respond to the question. And then make key reference to question interpretation where examiners may look for verbal clue and visual clue. You must make a key distinction between the two. Verbal clue refers to the words of the characters, and then visual, it means their facial expression, appearance, such as not only body. And with body language, you can even talk about posture. How is the character standing? Is it tilted to the side? Is it bending, or and so forth? Those are the adjectives that you may use. Right, now let us go to the storyline. A tree just fell on my car with an exclamation mark. And then when I look at the eyes are wide open. The mouth here is wide open. The hands are stretched out. So that's exactly what you do when you interact and analyze a cartoon. You look at everything. And then here, this is John and this is Garfield. I look at Garfield. His eyes are partially closed and he's just standing still. A tree just fell on my car. But when I look at the body language and facial expression, they do not correlate with the words, because if a tree just fell on a car, it's an accident, you should actually look worried. And this is quite humorous because John here is happy. His mouth is wide open, the eyes are wide open, and the hands are stretched out. And then now we go to frame 2. It says, "What should I do?" It's a question mark. And then his face, and then I also studied facial expression. The mouth is still wide open. The eyes are still wide open. He even have his hand over his mouth now. And then now Garfield is silent here. Now Garfield is having what you call a thought bubble. Remember, a thought bubble, it means that the character is thinking out loud. It's not really talking. He says, "John, John," with exclamation mark. Here's what to do. and then we have ellipses. Remember, ellipses indicate that the character is not done talking. Here we cannot say the character is not done talking because this is a thought bubble, not a speech bubble. So we can say that the character is not done thinking. And then it says, well, this is what you can do. And then when I look at Garfield, the eyes are still partially closed, but now here he's actually tapping John on his shoulder to get his attention. And then there are also small lines here. Remember, I've advised that you should actually study each and every detail included in that particular frame. And then the last frame, which is frame 3, he says, walk to the store to buy my food. Now look at the word walk. The word walk is bolded, and there's a reason for that, right? When words are bolded, we say is to show that the character is shouting or saying the words louder. However, in the context of this cartoon, we can't say the character is shouting or saying the words louder. In most of the cartoon, that will be the correct response. But remember here, this is a thought bubble. So it will be now to show what emphasis is, to show emphasis, right? Because Garfield is not talking, is a thinking. This is what you call a thought bubble, right? So you must you see, cartoons are each and every cartoon is unique, so you must not use a blanket answer towards all the cartoons. It depends on the context of the story. So hence I'm making you aware that I know that I did mention that in a cartoon, when words are bolded with exclamation marks, to indicate that the character is shouting or saying the words louder. However, in the context of this cartoon, this is actually a thought bubble to emphasize that the character is thinking out loud, not really shouting. So here is to emphasize that this person must do what? Must walk. And I've also advised that you must not rush to go to the questions. Once you are done reading the conversation, you then ask yourself this question: what is the story here? The story is that John made or announced to Garfield that a tree just fell on his car. However, we have noted in the first frame that there's a contradiction, because if a tree really fell on his car, he should really look worried. However, his facial expression and body language contradicts the statement that he just said, because the mouth is wide open, he looks happy. And when I remember, when you make a note or you make key reference to a particular emotion, that emotion must be coupled with evidence, and ways your evidence by describing the character's facial and body language, and you use adjectives. I'm repeating. The mouth is wide open, the eyes are wide open, the hands are stretched out, and he's actually smiling. So it's a contradiction of someone who just had an accident whereby a tree fell on his car. And then in the second frame, he's further asking, what should I do? He's still sustaining the same excitement with key reference to facial expression, because the mouth is still wide open and the eyes are still wide open. And then here now, Garfield came up with a solution to say, John, here's what you do. Walk to the store to buy my food. It's a humorous cartoon. This is a very funny cartoon, because John wanted to run away from the fact that he needed to go and buy Garfield's food, to say, I can't go because guess what happened? A tree just fell on my car. And then Garfield was not buying it. Is that you still have an alternative, bruh. You still have an option. If you thought that a tree fell on your car, and of course, this is just a lie, because you don't look like someone who just had such a terrible encounter with a tree that fell on his car. He said, what is another alternative? Walk to the store to buy what? My food. And then you look at John's facial expression. It's different from how he was from frame 1 and frame 2. There is no excitement here. You look at the last frame, the eyes are no longer wide open, the eyes are partially closed, and then the lips are pursed or tightly closed. And then this shows what? It shows disappointment, because perhaps she thought that Garfield will sympathize with him and say, okay, no, it's fine, there's no need for you to get me food. So once you have done that, then that's when you can go what? You can go to the questions. Now let us go to the questions. And again, I'm going to repeat the importance of question interpretation, please. And then refer to frame 1. Always revisit the frame that is being the question is based on. Always repeat refer to it. Describe Garfield's body language, and then also check mark allocation is only one. So we go to frame one. Then remember, we are not looking for John's body language. It says what? Garfield. Look at Garfield. There's no movement, there's no action. We can say what? Garfield is standing still. That is the correct answer. That Garfield is standing still. So the answer to 4.1.1, we can say that Garfield is standing. Garfield is standing still. Right. And then 4.1.2, it says, why would the reader not necessarily believe John? Remember, we are still on frame one. We are still in frame one. Why would the reader not necessarily believe John? This boils back to what I've just said, that once you have interpreted the cartoon accordingly, like I've shown you, studying the words as well as facial expression, already you've got the answers to the questions. Why would the reader not? I've already stated when we are analyzing that the statement contradicts his facial and body language because he doesn't look worried. Now, this is the question that you are going to demonstrate your skills to interpret visual literacy by using adjectives to describe. John, why would the reader not necessarily believe John in frame one? His mouth is wide open to show that he's smiling, as well as the eyes are wide open. You get a response to that. And then his hands are also stretched out. So it contradicts that a tree fell on his car. So the answer would be John's eyes, or you can say his mouth is wide opened and he is smiling. This is a 2 marks question. Please take note of mark allocation. So you need 2 facts, and then his hands are stretched out. Stretched out to show that he is excited, and that contradicts what he has just said. Right, now let us move along. In frame 2, why would the cartoonist use an ellipsis? I've been saying even in the previous cartoon we had a question based on ellipsis. Now here in the context of this poem, not poem, pardon me, in the context of this cartoon, we know that ellipses are used to indicate that the character is not done talking. But I said to you, this was a very unique cartoon. You needed to be very sharp with your visual literacy skills to contextualize your responses, and it's not in all instances where ellipses would indicate that the character is not done talking, because now in frame 2 the ellipses are used for Garfield, who is not talking, remember, because this is a thought bubble. So you can't just say because the character is not done talking. It's a contradiction, because in frame 2, Garfield is actually thinking out loud. So you need to contextualize the response. The correct response, therefore, will be to show that Garfield is not done thinking, not talking, because this is a thought bubble. You see how examiners can trick you. So you need to be vigilant. Right. And then, why is the word walk written in bold? When we were doing our analysis already, we've got our answers. Let us go back to the frame. Please, I would say do this over and over again. Don't assume that you know, at times I see candidates who forfeit marks not because they don't know the correct answers, because you just get into this frenzy mood of being in a hurry to answer questions. Take your time, okay? Take your time. Go back to the frame again and check. Walk to the store to buy my food. The word is bolded. And I've said, normally when words are bolded in a cartoon, is to indicate that the character is saying the words loud or shouting. But this one is unique. Is to show that Garfield is emphasizing that John even though a tree fell on his car, which is a lie, John still has an option to get Garfield's food, because in the absence of a car, he can still do what? He can still walk. And when we were doing our analysis, I did mention that the walk here is bolded for emphasis purposes. So already that is the response. So you see, once you have analyzed thoroughly your cartoon, you won't struggle when you get to the responses. Then choose the correct answer to complete the following sentence. Garfield's tone in this frame is tone. Remember the issue of tone. We also speak about tones a lot in literature and paper two. Tone is you check the diction, the choice of words of the character. Then you are able to pick up what is a possible attitude of the character when communicating on or conveying those words. Of course, he's being sarcastic, because in retrospect, if John was not joking, he was actually truthful to say a tree fell on his car. Garfield was supposed to sympathize with John, but of course, because he was able to pick it up that John is probably lying. Not probably, John is lying, because he looks excited for somebody who just had his car a tree fell on his car. So the appropriate tone here, it will be sarcastic, from the word sarcasm, right? How? Now, this is a question that I'm going to unpack, a question that is very important, grade 12. How does John's facial expression in frame 3 change in comparison to frame 1 and 2? This question is a question that actually seeks your ability to demonstrate or to show us what you normally call contrast. I'm sorry, my spelling is wrong here. It's supposed to be contrast, difference, right? When you want to show contrast, don't talk about various features, because you can't talk about John's legs are crossed in frame 1 compared to frame 2 where his mouth is wide open. You see, in that response, it's difficult for me to note where the contrast is, because you have spoken about legs as well as mouth. But if you can use the same feature differently, it becomes very easy. Like if I can say John crossed his arms in frame 1 compared to frame 2 where his arms are stretched out, I'm speaking about the same feature differently. So it's easier for me now to convey or to demonstrate, if not to show, where the contrast is. And when we were analyzing the cartoon, I definitely did show you the difference between John's facial expression in frame 1 and 2 compared to frame 3. However, let us go back to the cartoon. So please make note of this question of contrast, because a lot of learners don't do justice to this question. So please learn to answer the question correctly. The question of contrast, the question of contrast correctly. So it says the difference between how John is in frame 1 and 2 in comparison to how John is in frame 3. So in your answer, I must be able to note that here you're talking about frame 1 and 2, here you're talking about frame 3. So I would say I'll start my answer to say in frame 1 and 2, John's eyes. Okay, let me just do this. Pardon me. Okay. John's eyes are wide opened. Okay, we can just safely say John's eyes and mouth, right, are wide opened. I'm talking about what? Frame 1 and 2. And in frame 3, so once you say frame 3, that's where now we are going to introduce an element of contrast. And in frame 3, his eyes are partly closed or partially closed. Partly closed. Sorry. It's closed. And his lips are pursed, or you can say the lips are tightly closed if you don't want to use the word pursed. Now, let us study this. In frame 1 and 2, John's eyes are wide open. John's eyes and mouth are wide open, which is true because the mouth is opened, the mouth is open, the eyes are wide open, the eyes are wide open, right? Compared to frame 3, where his eyes are partially closed and the lips are pursed, or the lips are tightly closed. What I have done, I've spoken about the same features differently. I did not talk about John's eyes and then only in frame 3 now I talk about John's hands. So that when you speak about different features, it becomes difficult for you to show us where the contrast is. So please learn to do justice to the question of contrast. And I believe if you can follow the tip that I've just given you now, it will become very effortless for you to respond to that question. Now let us go to the last question. Do you think Garfield's behavior is acceptable in this cartoon? Substantiate your answer. Again, this is a higher order question. Grade 12s, please learn to answer and fully substantiate your responses, especially your higher order questions. The last question, it will be, if it's a humorous cartoon, mainly it will be for you to justify the humor that is created or to offer an opinion, right? To offer an opinion, to offer an opinion based on what is happening or what transpired in the cartoon. Refrain from answering ambiguously, so where your answers are just scattered around and then you deviate from the storyline. Use the storyline. Even though you offer your opinion, contextualize your opinion to suit the context of the storyline. Don't just offer an opinion and speak about irrelevant ideas that are far-fetched from what transpired in the storyline. So you can still say yes, you can still say no, that Garfield's behavior is acceptable, or no, Garfield's behavior is not acceptable. But use the storyline to substantiate your answer. One can say, yes, Garfield's behavior is acceptable in this cartoon because in frame 1, John said a tree fell on his car. However, his mouth was wide open and the eyes were wide open and he was smiling, meaning that he was lying. So Garfield was right to say that John can still walk to the store to get him food. You see, in my answer, I went all out and I made key reference to a particular frame. So even when you answer an opinion-based question, please show that and demonstrate that you understand or you possess the correct skill of answering a cartoon. Still make reference to the character's body language, facial expression to fully substantiate your response. Or you can say no, Garfield should sympathize with John because a tree for that, but that one it's okay, it's fine. I can't say because open-ended questions we accept both yes and no. But if you say no, then it will be that Garfield should show sympathy since John made him aware that a tree fell on his car. But the most appropriate one that can be easier for you to substantiate is the fact that it's actually humorous because John's facial expression and body language contradicts what he said in frame 1. But don't answer like saying, no, yes, it is justifiable because John lied in frame 1. Then you just end there. How do you know that he lied? Go into the nitty-gritty of your response. Go into detail. Leave no stone unturned. Say that John lied because in frame 1, his mouth is wide open, eyes wide open. He's even happy and smiling, as well as in frame 2, which contradict the statement that a tree fell on his car to show that he is lying. So Garfield is justified in his behavior to suggest that John has an option to walk to the store to get him food. Thank you. I hope this is fruitful, and once more, good luck for your preparatory examination. Let us work hard and scoop distinctions in English. Thank you.